All right.
We
are live with Joe Saxton.
Does it matter if the volume isn't on the phone?
Oh, I don't know. Hey, if you are here, why don't you comment and let us know if you can hear Joe?
Hi.
Okay.
As you can tell, I know nothing about Periscope.
But
all.
She's learning. She's gonna know so much. Okay,
Really
they
slowly.
can hear you.
Oh, hey!
They can hear you.
Hi. Fabulous. Now, apparently we're meant to hang out for a little bit first before I actually into things. So, I hope you're having a good day. I am in sunny Minnesota, and when I say sunny, I mean cloudy outside. Cloudy outside. This is my car, which Katie's not going to show you all of it because it is really messy today. Although it's not so bad,
No, it's
and it doesn't smell of vomit or anything like that. So I'm quite proud of it today. So the reason why I wanted to do Periscope today. Do you say do Periscope? Okay.
I guess.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
That's right, verbiage. Yeah.
The reason why I wanted to do it today is I know that the wonderful IF crowd had shared a video I'd done from the IF Lead gathering in September. I don't know if any of you were there. If so, hi, great to see you again. And I noticed that a number of people responded to it. It was conversations some of you guys have been having about discipleship anyway. A number of you had said things like, hey, me and this other person were talking about it last night, or just not the talk, but the same kind of principles and what it looks like to make disciples in our day and age and the vulnerability we feel in sharing our lives. So what I'd love to do is just talk a few moments about some things that I've learned about discipleship. I'm still learning, and then I'd love your questions. We've got about 15-20 minutes together, and so if it can serve you, if it can help you, then I hope so. I hope it's great. If it's not, just forget this ever happened and tell me to write on blog.
Oh my gosh, no, it's gonna be so good.
And so every so often you'll probably hear Katie's voice as well. Katie is somebody I'm discipling. She's a wonderful church planter, and she also is telling me and teaching me how to do Periscope and basically all things social media because I'm rubbish.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Terrible.
Yes.
Okay, so discipleship. I think for me, when I look at the Bible, I see that discipleship is something all of us are called to, yeah? It's like Jesus's marching orders, that as we're going, as the Greek text unpacks for us, as you're going, make disciples of all nations. And so I feel like whether we're young or more mature in age, single or married, with kids, no kids, that all of us need to be thinking through what discipleship looks like in our lives and who's discipling us, as well as who and how we're discipling others. And when we look at the life of Jesus, and we talk a lot about this in the context of 3DM, the movement I chair the board for and stuff, we talk about when Jesus made disciples, it birthed this missionary movement, it changed the world. And sometimes we find when we make disciples or when we try and do discipleship, we don't quite see things happening in the same way. And so I thought what I'd do is I'd reflect on some of the key things I've learned from the people who've discipled me over the years, and some thoughts on the Bible and that, and then again, over to you. The word disciple in the Greek is mathetes, and that's like a student, but it's not a student in purely academic sense. It's a student in the sense of an apprentice, someone who's like hands-on, learning the tools of the trade, practicing the things. So when you're saying you're a disciple of Jesus, it's not just that you know what the Bible says, although that's an incredibly important part of it. What you're also saying is that you are studying his life to imitate his life. You are practicing his life. That means we're learning how to share the message of the kingdom like Jesus. It means we're learning how to love like Jesus, forgive like Jesus, pray for the sick like Jesus, have compassion like Jesus, disciple like Jesus. That's what we're going after. So for me, when I look back on the people who've discipled me over the years, I think of the first people were a married couple, and I was in London. They were the people who led me to faith when I was a 9-year-old girl. I'm forever grateful to them. And what I'm remembering most about them is when they discipled me as a child, they told me everything. I mean, we had Bible studies on spiritual warfare, about gifts of the Spirit. It's kind of intense, about gifts of the Spirit. But they also encouraged us in mission. We learned about mission. We were involved in mission from the very beginning. It wasn't like I learned about the Bible for 3 years and then we had a mission trip. It was like, who are you inviting next week? Who are we going to invite? Who should we be praying for? How can we pray for your family? What does God want to do with you? What's he calling you to? And being invited to walk in the ways of the word together, to learn about the power of the Spirit. So that was one group of people that struck me. And it makes me think of when we're looking at our call to make disciples, there is an element of us leading people to the cross, leading people to Jesus. Have you had the chance and the privilege to lead anybody to Jesus recently? And once we've led them there, to continue showing them what it means to follow Jesus, and to be an example, asking them questions, giving them time. It seemed like this couple had endless time. They clearly didn't, but they were accessible enough to show me what it meant to love the Lord. I'm reminded of another couple in my teens. My teen years were not quite as great as many, and there was a particular point when I was about 17, 18 that my faith really dangled by a very, very slim thread. I wasn't sure whether I was going to continue the God thing at all. And I remember the thing that stands out most about the way they discipled me was the love, the sheer love. That they fed me a lot. That's a theme you'll see a lot in the people who discipled me. I do love food. But they loved me a lot, and they fed me a lot, and they loved me unconditionally. But their unconditional love was not such that they loved me all the way to my own destruction. They would speak into my life. They would challenge me at times, but they would never condemn. And I think we do see something of that in the life of Jesus, don't we? That he loved people enough to challenge them, to speak really difficult things into their lives from time to time. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't have wanted to be in Peter's shoes when the whole "get behind me, Satan" conversation was happening in Matthew 16. I think I would have liked to be somewhere else. But you see Jesus' love for Peter so much that he's prepared to say a challenging thing. And my encouragement to you is, with the people that you're discipling, the people you're investing in, do you love them enough to say the tough stuff? Have you built the kind of relationship? Remember, Jesus had built that kind of relationship with Peter. He laid down his life for Peter. Have you loved someone enough to challenge them as you disciple them? And the next set of people that come to my mind are when I was at Bible college, like 1920 or so, and there was a woman there who was like me. She was Londoner. She was black like I am. She had almost the same skin tone even. We'd walked so much of a similar life. And what struck me about her and what drew me to her was her laugh. And I know it sounds an odd thing to say, but her laugh didn't match her story. She'd had a really broken history. And yet she laughed like a free woman. And because she was a free woman, and I was drawn to her because I loved her freedom. Oh my gosh, I needed her freedom. And I remember I kind of almost stalked her, to be brutally honest with you, but anyway, awkward. But I remember asking her, how did you get free? How can you forgive the things you've been through? How do you get to be like this? She had a life that I desperately wanted. And it wasn't that she was my hero in the sense of she was replacing Jesus. Jesus is my savior, I got that. But I needed a living illustration. You know, that's why I was saying on the video about the Pinterest life versus the real life. She had bad days and hard days, but what was clear about her is that Jesus had set her free. And so I wanted to be discipled by someone who could take me to places and show me, like, be a signpost to the freedom that only the Lord could bring. And I think when we're thinking of what it means for us to make disciples, are we signposts of the kind of freedom Jesus brings? Are we signposts of the kind of missionary life we're called to? Are we signposts of what it means to get in the word and all that kind of stuff? Or do we just tell people about it and tell people the information and hope they kind of catch up? The other person at Bible college was one of the other members of staff, a guy called Alf, who I was the youngest on the mission team, and he made me his assistant leader. And I was humbled just even by the invitation that he took me, even though I wasn't entirely ready, and allowed that process to as a mentoring process to grow me alongside others on the team. And I'm forever thankful for that, that he saw potential and he cultivated that potential. He was very challenging in certain things, very encouraging. He taught me so much, things that 20 years later I'm still walking with. But I think there is something in our discipling of others, particularly as we're cultivating leaders and cultivating those we love, that we're looking at God's potential in their lives and calling it to life, but not just calling it, coming alongside people so that they can grow and creating opportunity for them. And then the last people I'll mention are a couple called Mike and Sally Breen, who I shouldn't laugh when I mention them because they're fabulous, but Sally may be listening. Who mentored me when I was in Sheffield, and they're in the States too. So they still speak into my life, and they speak into my life as a leader. They speak into my life as a friend. They speak into my life as a woman. And what's been great about their discipling over the years has been this freedom to be. Again, I ate at their kitchen table for a number of years because their food was better than mine. I was a college student. It's not hard to work out the right way to go. But also they'd invite me into their family. I got to see things that perhaps were not part of my own story. I got encouraged to dream about what God may be calling me to do. I got empowered. Someone who took the time to talk through my gifts, talk about where I'd messed up in things. I always respected that people would love me enough to tell me when I'd messed up. And who would tell me what they'd learned about Jesus. And I could see it in their life. I could see it in what their kids looked like, what their kids still look like. I could see it in how they lived, that these were people who were serious about the Lord, and they encouraged me in my calling. So those are some of the different things I've learned about discipleship. And I'm so excited about the privilege of discipling. I'm so excited about the opportunity to disciple that I love talking about it. But I love it because there's something about when we invest the life of another. And I'll end with this thought before questions. I look at Barnabas, the one who was called the son of encouragement. He was so defined by encouraging others, putting encouraging into people, that although his name was Joseph, was it Joseph? Yes, Joseph, he becomes Barnabas. Without Barnabas, there would have been no Paul. Without Barnabas, there would have been no Mark, no John Mark, and no Mark. And I think of how Barnabas sought Paul out. We see that in the book of Acts, don't we? He sought Paul out, and even though others were afraid of him, he invested in him. Then he stepped back and let Paul go forward. We look at when Mark failed, that Barnabas was ready to keep on walking with him. So much so that we see in Paul's later letters about reaching out to John Mark, saying he's useful for my ministry, and also the Gospel of Mark. We wouldn't have so much if it wasn't for someone willing to disciple. So my encouragement to you, particularly as we wrap up one year and go towards a new one, is to ask yourselves, who's God calling you to invest in? Who's God calling you to encourage? And how can you get in on what God's doing in that area and see people's lives transformed?
It's so good. Okay, who has some questions? Shoot them at Jo and we'll ask her.
And if I don't know the answer, Katie will.
Jo's the expert. People are saying how good it is. They're saying it's
thanks.
so good. Jo, what do you feel like? How do you know if you're ready to disciple someone? How do you know if you have a life that's worth following?
I think what we've got to remember is that we're all works in progress. If we're looking at how do I know whether it's right to disciple someone or we're ready, not everything in our lives are all together. Now, some of us are going through serious times of recovery and all that kind of stuff. But even there, maybe there's something of our story that can be a mentoring moment, a discipling moment with someone. I would encourage us to be in positions of serving others where we can be an example. Now, there were areas, particularly when my life was being pieced back together in quite a tender way, that I don't know that I knew. I didn't know my name, to be brutally honest with you. I didn't know who I was or where I was going. But sometimes it was the mentors around me who would tell me I was ready. They said, look, you're more ready than you realize. Why don't you share your testimony? What we're doing when we're discipling is that we're looking at the things that God has done in our lives and sharing it with others and saying, like Paul said, imitate me as I imitate Christ. So maybe for you, it might be worth you writing a list of the breakthroughs God's given you. Is it with money? Is it with how you do family? Is it with getting past your past? Is it with how you've gone through some difficult times? Please don't feel disqualified because you're a work in progress, because we all are. I think start there. And the other thing is, are there people around you who are asking about it as well? Because if they're asking you questions, maybe they see things that you don't see.
Yeah. Do you approach people to disciple them, or should they approach you to disciple them?
Oh, now, Katie, you might want to answer that one. But a bit of both happens. What I'm struck by is that Jesus prayed all night about who to invest in.